Indigenous Food Friday. Today we are making Bahnaha, or bean cakes. It's super easy. It's a little time consuming, but really not bad after you have the hang of it. And all you need is finely ground cornmeal, whatever kind of dried beans you want. It can be black, pinto, skunk beans, Potawatomi beans, whatever kind of beans you have on hand. Super easy. So dried beans, your cornmeal, some salt, and then to garnish this after we're done, you can use maple syrup, of course. You can use just salt and pepper. You can sprinkle it with culinary ash or your wild sumac. Oh, and you're gonna need corn husks. If you don't have corn husks, if you don't save them, which you should, you can get them from any Mexican store will have them. They come in packages because of all the making tamales and everything like that. So if you don't have dried corn husks, you can get them from a Mexican market. Some grocery stores will have them too. But you'll need, because we're going to be making the bean cakes in the corn husks. So then to get the corn husks ready, because they're all dried, you're going to boil them for 10 minutes in water. So just make sure that 10 minutes prior to this next step, you're going to want to have boiled and softened corn husks for at least 10 minutes. Now on the stove, I have been cooking my 2 cups, so 2 cups dried beans. I soaked them overnight and now they're cooking on the stove, and they've been cooking for about an hour. I'm going to put in a little blip on how to do all of that. So that is about, the beans are about ready. So the night before you do this, make sure you're soaking your beans. And then about an hour before you want to actually prepare these, you're going to want to cook those beans. And of course, remember, I always add cedar because it helps with the flavor. It really brings an earthy, amazing flavor to the beans, as well as it cuts down on the gas producing properties in the beans. So multifunction there. And then I also like to put in a sprig of culinary sage, but you can use rosemary or thyme or omit it, or put in something else that you like. This is all about what you have and what you like to put in so that you're sustainable with your food, as well as just what you have on hand. So eating doesn't have to be expensive, and it can be nutritious at the same time. So we're gonna get going so that you can see what we're gonna do. So next I'm gonna show you how to prepare your beans, and then we'll come back and do the rest. After you've soaked your beans overnight, you're gonna bring it to a boil. You wanna make sure you maintain 1.5 inches of water over the top of the beans. Now I like to put in a nice big sprig of culinary sage. And then I also like to put in a nice big twig of cedar. You can use rosemary or thyme if you prefer. A dash of salt. And then you're going to cover, bring it to a boil for about 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, so now in a pretty large mixing bowl, I think every Indigenous family has this bowl. This was my mother's bowl, and now I use it for everything. I think you can find this in every Indigenous household. Anyway, this nice plastic mixing bowl was handed down to me from my mother, so we're gonna use that. I love it because it's not so high, it's wide, but I can fit a lot of stuff in here, so I can really get in there and mix. So from here, we're gonna add 3 cups of finely ground cornmeal, just right in there. Now I'm gonna add quite a bit of salt. This is probably, honestly, it is probably like 2 teaspoons of salt. And then we're just gonna mix that all together. And with corn and beans, you do need to add a good number of salt, just so, because to help bring out the flavor. So, because beans and corn don't have really any sodium in them by themselves. So we're adding enough sodium. On your list of ingredients, I forgot to say you're gonna want about a teaspoon of baking powder, and that's about all I have left in this can. So we drop that in there. So about a teaspoon of baking powder, and then you're gonna want a teaspoon of baking soda, a nice rounded one. So that's about a teaspoon. I really should start measuring stuff better, but I just don't. You know me. So it's about that much. Okay, now on the stove, the beans are almost done. You don't want them so they're mushy, but you want them so they're done. Again, I apologize if the camera is moving. Zasshole is back and he must move everything. So if it's wobbly, it's just the cat. Don't mind him. But on the stove, I have my beans cooking. Now, while your beans are cooking, you want to make sure you always keep 1.5 inches of water above the beans. And so at this point, still make sure there's 1.5 inches of water above your beans, and have it boiling. We're going to add it to this mixture, boiling it all. Remove your twigs of cedar, and I'm going to go move the cat. I'll be right back. Okay, the cat is gone for now. So now we're going to bring over the pot of boiling beans, water and all. Remove your sprigs of spices, of your cedar and whatever else you have in there. If there's little leaves that has fallen off, it's totally fine. It'll add to the flavor. We're gonna dump that all in, boiling, and then you're just gonna fold it in. So I'll be right back and we'll do that. Okay, here's our boiling pot of beans. We're gonna add that into our mixture. Okay, and then we're just gonna fold this all together. Now, if it gets too stiff, you can add more boiling water. You can boil it, your kettle of water. If it's too runny, because you want this to be really stiff, you're gonna wanna be able to mold it with your hands. So if it's too runny, too thin, add some more cornmeal. And this is a little bit too runny for me, so I am going to add more cornmeal, just a little bit at a time. You don't want so much that then you're going back and forth between adding hot water and adding more cornmeal. So just a little bit at a time, but you do want a pretty stiff dough, and just fold that in. And you can see how this is making a really nice stiff batter. But we want it to be a nice stiff dough. So this is looking pretty good. Okay. Now at this point, I'm gonna add more salt. This is probably gonna be closer to a tablespoon of salt. I'll just dump it in. So that was about a tablespoon of, and I use kosher salt or sea salt, but use whatever salt that you have. And then just continue to fold that in. It's getting, because it's the hot water is absorbing into the cornmeal, it's gonna get stiffer and stiffer. That's why if you add more cornmeal, you wanna just do it a little bit at a time. So that looks, that's pretty stiff. I know once this cools off a little bit, I'm gonna be able to mold it a lot easier, but it's too hot to mess with my hands right now. So I'm gonna set this aside, let it finish absorbing, but we'll prepare for the next step at the same time. Okay, while I'm waiting to prepare my cakes, I'm gonna go ahead and fill a fairly large pot. This is the largest pot I have besides my ginormous stock pot. I'm gonna fill it about halfway full of water, get it on the stove so we can bring it up to a boil, because once we make our bean cakes in the corn husk, we're gonna boil them. You will see how amazing this process is. Okay, so in this pot, I've had my corn husks boiling for at least an hour. So you can see they're nice and pliable. Now the ones that came out in strips, that's okay, because you're gonna need to be making a lot of strips, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Okay, so we're gonna wanna make some strips out of the corn husks, because that will give us our ties. So you're just gonna basically go like that. You want about at least a 1/2 inch, and then lay those aside. Sorry, if you hear that barking upstairs, that's my son. He is homesick, and but he's getting better, he's fine. So we're gonna wanna make, I don't know, I'm gonna use a couple of these husks to make my strips. And then I can always make more if I need them. And then you're gonna wanna keep the strips after I'm done making these. I'm gonna put them, I've got some hot water still sitting in the bottom of this bowl. I'm gonna sit them back in there so that they'll stay soft and supple, because we'll need them to be soft and supple because we'll be tying them. So sit them in there, make some more. Now you can use twine if you have twine. But it just works out better and it's easier to just use what you have, which is a good corn husk. Okay, so you're gonna make your strips, and then when you're done, let's come back and we'll go to the next step. Okay, so you've got your strips ready to go. Then you just get a corn husk. You kind of flatten it out, but you don't want to tear it. Now we're gonna make, well, I get a spoonful of the paste and my hands are impeccably clean. And you're gonna make, it's about 4 inches by 2, like a log, basically. Maybe a little bit more. And you just roll it in your hands to make a nice log. Now it's still pretty warm, but it's cool enough to handle. Then you're just gonna put that in your corn husk. I'm gonna make it a little bit longer. Just like that, okay? And then to roll it, we're gonna start here at the end. And you roll it. Now we're gonna tuck this side in. And tuck this side in and keep rolling it towards you. Keeping those ends tucked in. Nice. Now we're gonna take our strips, and on each side, we're just going to gently tie it. This end is a little stiff and does not like to stay there, but we'll make it work. Okay, so then we just tie it very carefully, and just once. It doesn't need to be like some great knot or anything, just enough to keep that all closed. And then tie the other end, just like that. See? Perfect. And then we set it aside. I just set it aside on a baking dish because it's easy, and we let it kind of set like that, okay? And then we just keep doing that. Okay, now if you think like your corn husks are still a little bit stiff, or you notice that they're starting to dry out, go ahead and add some boiling hot water to your bowl, and then just use tongs so that you don't burn yourself. Okay, so here's another one, just the same thing, and you're just going to do it over and over again. This is a really good thing for kids to learn how to do too, so go ahead and invite your kids or grandkids or nieces and nephews to come join out or join in the fun. And it's a cultural lesson at the same time. Move that. Okay, so again, you just roll it up, tuck the ends in. See, now during the summer when I was telling you all to keep your corn husks, now you know why. Because we use everything that we can. Okay, then we get our 2 ties. See, so it's super easy. It's just a little time consuming. But if you get your, the kids around to help out, or your sisters, or whatever, this is a little thick. Make another one. Then it's really not a big deal. See, it's just like that. And then we just keep on going. And it takes a little bit of practice, you know, for those who have been doing it forever with your nokomis, your grandmother or your aunties. You know, we all know it takes time to, well, that just flipped right open. See, even with all the practice in the world, I'm gonna shorten that a little bit. I guess just like life, right? Sometimes unexpected things happen and you just gotta roll with it. But if you look at our nokomis and our aunties, they can make this so fast, it's crazy. It's all that practice. So don't get frustrated, just keep on going. Because you can't give up, you just gotta keep practicing. And then it will be good. I remember when I was just little and I would watch like my mom, even just playing cards or something, and she would be like, her hands could just move so fast. And I remember thinking, man, I wish my hands could move that fast, you know? The things that you wish you could do when you were a kid. And I remember that to this day. Like, I wonder when I'll be able to do that just like my mom. Good memories, right? And then you keep going. And you can see, like, if this was a family affair, you had everyone over, like, this can go pretty fast. But if you're just by yourself, like I am today, it takes a little bit longer. But that's okay, because it's totally worth it in the end. And it will be good nutrition for my son who's sick right now, along with fire cider. And so that he can get better faster. Tuck that in, tuck the ends in. And fold. This one's a little short. Let's go for this one. Having problems tying this one. See, again, another lesson in life, right? It doesn't always go according to plan, but you go with it and it'll work. Just like that. Okay, I'm gonna keep doing this and until I get them all folded and ready to go. Remember, we have a pot of water heating up on the stove, and so I'll meet you back here when these are all tied and we're ready to go to the next part. Okay, now here are these gorgeous Bahnanas, the bean cakes all ready to go. This recipe will make about 40 individual Bahana. But I'm gonna do these in batches, or you can use 2 different pots to do it in. They are going to gently boil for an hour. So you probably wanna get 2 different pots of water going so that they can all come out at the same time. So now I've got my pot of boiling water ready, and we'll go to that next step. Okay, so now I've got my pot of boiling water going, and then you're gonna gently drop in your Bahnanas. And it's okay if they're a little crowded. It's all right, they're family. They're all just gonna cook together. So there's about, so I've got about 20 Bahnanas in each one. Okay, we're gonna bring this back up to a boil, which won't take long. Turn it down so that it's just like a simmering boil, and you're gonna do this for an hour. Okay, they've simmered for an hour and they are ready. Okay, so this has been on a slow boil for an hour. So we just go ahead and uncover. It's gonna be hot. So make sure you have a good pair of tongs. And then I just have my trusty old yellow bowl and a colander just to catch the water. And we're gonna very gently take them out. Maybe not so gently. And then just place them in the colander, kind of vertically laying there so that it can drain any remaining water out. And you can tell like they've expanded quite a bit because we made bean cakes. It smells so good. So you're just gonna let these sit in the colander for like maybe 5 minutes, just enough for the water, the hot water, to kind of evaporate and then also seep down into the colander. So we'll let this rest for about 5 minutes and then we'll do the reveal. And I'm excited for you guys to see. Okay, so now to undo them, it's super easy. You just have a pair of scissors and you just cut the knot. And then unwrap it. Oh, perfect. Look at that. So it's this beautiful done cake of bean and corn, and so it's loaded with nutrients, fiber, and protein. So these are going to be great for my son who's sick right now, along with fire cider to make him feel better. Now, next I'm going to plate this so you can see all the different ways that you can dress it, depending on your flavor, maybe what you're having for dinner or lunch that night, or maybe just for a snack. So I'm going to grab my plate, we'll plate it, and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so here I've got 3 of my Bahnanas out so that I can show you 3 different ways. So the first way is you can either drizzle it with maple syrup or honey. And since my son is sick, it's better for him to have raw local honey. So I'm going to use honey, and we're just going to drizzle this over the top. And he'll probably totally love this one because he has a sweet tooth too. And beans are one of his favorite things to eat, so I know he's going to eat this right up. And then next we have just our wild sumac. It gives a ton of vitamin C and adds a really nice tart flavor. So that will be good for him as well. And then on the last one, I'm going to use culinary ash. This is rosehip ash, so it'll be loaded with vitamin C and also help him to digest all of the corn and the beans. And it doesn't need much, just a little. So here you go. I hope you enjoy it. And it is a great dish to make for your family. It's super filling and full of fiber and nutrition. So I hope you enjoy it. If you give it a try, let me know what you think. Leave it in the comments. Enjoy! Mama P.